He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. But what happens when there is no why, when we drift through existence like ghosts, enslaved not by chains but by our own blindness? We do not live, we survive. We wake, we work, we scroll, we sleep. We see our lives pass before us, yet we feel no ownership over them. We mimic the gestures of others, pursue what they pursue, suffer as they suffer. And when the weight of this hollowness becomes too much to bear, we drown it in distractions, in cheap pleasures, in the illusion of progress. The existential crisis of today is not a philosophical debate. It is a plague, a silent erosion of the soul, a slow-motion suicide that has infected entire generations. Nietzsche saw this coming. He declared the death of God not as a victory, but as a catastrophe. God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. With that death, the great unifying structure of meaning collapsed, and what was left? Nothing but a void that we refuse to acknowledge, let alone confront. We fill it with empty aspirations, social validation, and the pursuit of success measured by other standards. We are terrified of silence because in silence, the truth becomes deafening. We have no purpose, no internal compass, no foundation upon which to stand. So we run endlessly, mindlessly, further from ourselves. But running is not enough. The void does not disappear simply because we refuse to look at it. It lingers, growing larger with every distraction, every fleeting pleasure, every desperate attempt to fabricate meaning where none exists. We cling to ideologies, to identities, to movements that promise certainty, not because they are true, but because they shield us from the unbearable weight of uncertainty. We become zealots, not out of conviction, but out of fear of admitting that without the grand narratives we once relied upon, we are lost. And yet, there is another path. Nietzsche did not mourn the death of God as an end, but as a challenge, an invitation to create, to forge our own values, to become what he called the Übermensch, a being who does not seek meaning in external sources, but generates it from within. This is the test we face. Do we remain shackled to borrowed purpose, endlessly fleeing from ourselves? Or do we confront the void head-on, embracing the chaos, and emerging not as slaves to illusion, but as masters of our own destiny? Social media amplifies this tragedy. It dangles before us curated images of success, of fulfillment, of meaning, making us believe that we too can have it if we just follow the formula. So we adopt goals that are not ours, mimic paths that were never meant for us, and when they fail to bring us joy, we are left with nothing but bitterness and self-loathing. We do not ask, who am I? What do I desire? Instead, we ask, how do I become like them? We become actors in a play we never wrote, reciting lines that disgust us, moving through a life that feels borrowed. Man is something that shall be overcome, Nietzsche warned. But instead of overcoming ourselves, we submit. We choose comfort over truth, conformity over self-exploration. And in doing so, we become slaves to the very world we hoped to conquer. And what is the price of this self-abandonment? A life spent in quiet misery, a mind tormented by its own cowardice. Depression and anxiety are not random afflictions. They are symptoms of this disconnection. We see it everywhere. The global rates of depression and suicide have skyrocketed. According to the World Health Organization, more than 700,000 people take their own lives each year. Suicide is now one of the leading causes of death among young adults. Millions more live in silent despair, trapped in cycles of self-destruction, addiction, and nihilism. Mental health disorders are no longer the struggles of the few. They are the defining afflictions of the modern era. We numb ourselves with substances, with entertainment, with anything that keeps us from facing the terrifying void within. This is why addiction rates, whether to drugs, alcohol, social media, or pornography, continue to rise. We are running from ourselves, but there is nowhere to hide. And I know this personally. I have been there. I have battled addiction, anxiety, and the darkest thoughts a mind can conjure. I have questioned whether life was worth the struggle, whether there was any point in continuing. There were nights when I stared at the ceiling, suffocated by my own thoughts, wishing for an escape that never came. But in that abyss, I discovered something. The fight itself is liberating. To struggle means to be alive. To confront the darkness means to defy it. And though the path is painful, though it demands everything from us, it is the only way forward. Our minds, however, betray us. We are masters of self-deception, architects of our own stagnation. We rationalize inaction, telling ourselves we are too tired, too unlucky, too burdened by circumstances beyond our control. We postpone, believing we will start tomorrow, next week, next year. We justify our failures by blaming society, our upbringing, bad luck, anything but ourselves. Victimhood becomes a comfortable refuge, an excuse to avoid the terrifying responsibility of self-overcoming. And the longer we stay in this state, the weaker we become, the more alienated we feel from the possibility of change. And why is this? Because the system is designed to keep us this way. A society of strong-willed individuals, of thinkers, of self-actualized people is dangerous to those in power. We are not meant to be free. We are meant to be obedient. The system thrives on our passivity, on our fear, on our addiction to comfort. The media feeds us distractions. The economy keeps us chained to debt. The culture rewards mediocrity and conformity. But let's be clear, this is not about absolving ourselves of responsibility. The system may be relentless in its efforts to keep us asleep, but at the end of the day, we are the ones who choose whether to stay in chains or break free. Yes, we are conditioned, manipulated, and restrained, but no cage is inescapable if we are willing to see it for what it is. Blaming the system alone is just another form of submission, another excuse to remain stagnant. The truth is, liberation is not given, it is seized. It demands struggle, sacrifice, and an unyielding will to reclaim what has been taken from us. Waking up is painful. Seeing the world as it is, rather than as we were taught to see it, is unsettling. But discomfort is the price of growth, and in that discomfort lies our power. The moment we stop seeking approval, stop fearing rejection, and stop surrendering to the illusions forced upon us, we take our first real step toward freedom. We live in an era of avoidance. Every aspect of modern culture is designed to keep us sedated, distracted, and numb. Algorithms dictate our attention, keeping us hooked on an endless stream of stimulation. Consumerism convinces us that the next purchase, the next achievement, the next like or comment will fill the void. We seek validation from others because we do not know how to validate ourselves. We chase relationships not out of love, but out of fear of loneliness. We create content, not because we have something to express, but because we fear being forgotten. But no amount of external approval can replace the absence of inner purpose. This is why millions feel lost, why they turn to self-destructive behaviors, why people live in quiet misery while presenting a facade of happiness. Technology has accelerated our descent into this passivity. Automation and convenience have stripped away the need for struggle, leaving us unchallenged, unstimulated, unfulfilled. We no longer hunt, build, or create in the way we once did. We consume, and the more we consume, the less we create, the weaker we become. We have severed our connection to nature, to the raw forces that once shaped us. In their place, we are given screens, distractions, artificial substitutes for real experience. This crisis does not only affect us individually, it corrodes our relationships, our ability to connect with others. Love, friendship, and family have become casualties of this existential drift. We see it in the breakdown of meaningful bonds, in the rise of transactional relationships, in the increasing isolation that defines modern life. And when the foundation of human connection crumbles, society itself begins to disintegrate. The world is filled with people who have surrendered their agency, who have become spectators of their own lives, watching passively as the years slip through their fingers. And this is the ultimate tragedy, not that we suffer, but that we waste our suffering on nothing. Nietzsche did not call for simple endurance, he called for transformation. One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. But we fear our own chaos, so we suppress it, deny it, avoid it. And in doing so, we kill the possibility of something greater. This is not just a phase, it is the trajectory of the future. We are moving toward deeper isolation, greater dependence on artificial constructs of meaning, and an existence dictated by external forces. And yet, we are alone in this fight. Few spaces remain where these truths are spoken. This channel, and others like it, stand as rare sanctuaries for those who refuse to be blind. But even here, the battle is ours alone to fight. No one will save us. No system will offer us meaning. We must carve it out ourselves, with blood and effort. The way out is brutal, painful, necessary way. The way of self-confrontation, of tearing apart every borrowed belief, every external expectation, and standing naked before the truth of ourselves. This is what Nietzsche meant by the will to power, not the thirst for domination, but the courage to create, to impose meaning onto chaos, to forge our own values instead of inheriting them. It is a path of struggle, of endless questioning, of suffering. But it is the only path that leads to true life. To reject it is to accept a slow death. Overcoming this crisis requires more than passive reflection. It requires war. A war against complacency, against weakness, against the false narratives that have kept us in chains. It is a battle that must be fought daily, in every decision, in every moment of weakness where we are tempted to give up, to sink back into comfort, to choose distraction over purpose. We must embrace struggle. We must become stronger, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually. We must destroy the illusions that keep us bound, strip away every comforting lie, every excuse, every justification for inaction. This is not a temporary effort. It is a way of being, a complete rejection of passivity. If we fail, we will suffer regardless. But if we succeed, we will suffer with purpose, and there is no greater reward than that.